Hey friends, welcome to Shigaraki. So today we are gonna see, what if Deku achieved the Moonbreaker quirk. So before we start, check out my Patreon page for 18+X exclusive mature content. We will now proceed to the video. No one was born equal. No one knew this better than Izuku Midoriya. In a world where 80% of the world has superhuman powers dubbed as quirks, it was natural that some would be more gifted than others. Those with powerful quirks practically ran the world, while those with weaker quirks were for the most part content with serving their superiors. At least they weren't part of the 20% of the world which were born quirkless, such as Izuku. As Izuku knew, being quirkless was hell. Every day was a struggle for survival. No one wanted anything to do with a quirkless loser and were fine with using him to increase their own power. Such was a shame, for young Izuku would have been willing to help them anyways. There was nothing more he wanted than to be a hero like All Might, the #1 pro hero, the symbol of peace, and his idol. While this was something which was possible with a quirk, without one, he was always told to give up. Even his mom had effectively told him he couldn't be one, apologizing while sobbing when Izuku tearfully asked her if he could still be a hero the night after he was first diagnosed as quirkless. Despite this, the boy still attempted to make his dream a reality. He had sharpened his mind, making him a tactical genius for someone his age. He had asked his mom to allow him to take martial arts to strengthen his body. He did everything he could to reach his dream, but no one saw it as enough. He was never praised for his determination by his peers, but instead was mocked for being delusional. While it seemed like everyone loved making Izuku's life a living hell, there was one person who took a sadistic pleasure in doing so, his name being Katsuki Bakugo. Once his childhood friend, when Katsuki discovered his quirk gave him the ability to ignite his sweat to create powerful explosions, he made the quirkless boy his practice dummy. While his classmates and teachers constantly saw what he did, no one bothered stopping him. To them, Katsuki was destined to become a great hero with his powerful quirk. The world chose Katsuki over him, and Izuku was forced to live with this fact. Well, at least the mortal world rejected him. Unknown to the boy, he managed to catch the attention of something far more powerful than any hero. This being would grant Izuku the ability to finally achieve his dream. Although in a very unconventional way. A 6-year-old Izuku sighed as he sat on his bed in sadness. Today had been his birthday, and what did he receive as a present? A beat down from most of his class. When he got home, his mother had cut a cake for him, but all it did was remind him how he had no friends. Most kids would have had a party for their birthday, but not Izuku. How could he if the only other person there would be his mother? On any other day, Izuku would have also had his father to celebrate his birthday with, but apparently he was needed in Egypt. Being a world-famous archaeologist, the boy's father traveled a lot, but was usually around for his son's birthday. This time, apparently something big was found in Egypt, requiring his attention. While most kids would be angry at the fact their dad was missing their birthday, Izuku wasn't. He understood that his father worked hard to support his mother and him. At the moment, the hero wannabe wanted to get some sleep. Having no reason to stay up, but life had other plans for him. Izuku! His mom shouted, causing the boy to jolt upwards. Can you come down here for a second? Something came in the mail for you. Scurrying downstairs as fast as his little feet could take him, he was eager to see what was in the mail. He already knew his father was the one who sent the package, but the content inside truly excited him. His father always bought the most exotic gifts. Seeing her little boy so excited, Inko Midoriya smiled. Here you go. Be careful. Nodding, Izuku comically tore apart the packaging. Upon doing so, he was met with a creepy miniature statue of a well-dressed man with a bird skeleton for a head. From the corner of his eye, he saw his mom wince at the appearance of the statue, clearly disturbed. Surprisingly, Izuku didn't find it as scary as his mom did. For some reason, it called out to him, begging him to keep it in a safe place. Inspecting the statue a bit further, Ali noticed a small note taped to the bottom of the statue. Ripping it off from the stand, Izuku began reading. Hey champ, I'm really sorry I couldn't make it to your birthday this year. I hope you had a good time. During my travels, I ended up finding this little guy. His name is Khonshu, and during ancient times, he was believed to be the god of the moon and vengeance, protector of travelers in the night. Call it a gut feeling. But I immediately thought of you. Keep him near your bed and he should protect you from having nightmares. Don't go taking him to school or breaking him though, is an ancient artifact easily worth a lot of money. Love you, Dad. Well, I think it's time for you to go to bed, Inko said, having read the letter herself. Let's see if your dad's right. Wasting no time, Izuku ran up to his room. Taking extra care in not damaging the statue, he placed it right next to his alarm clock. Quickly falling asleep, the boy didn't have any nightmares caused by the bullying he's experienced that night. Strangely enough, the day he received the statue was the day he stopped having nightmares for the rest of his life. All right, as you all know, you're all now in middle school. Izuku's 6th grade homeroom teacher stated. Now 10, Izuku's life has become even harder. The beatings were more frequent and the verbal abuse was more severe. Even with the nightmares gone, the boy has spiraled into a deep depression. Compared to the social butterfly he once was, he was now an empty husk, not talking unless being spoken to. In 2 years, you'll be applying to schools which will help you become what you want to be in the future. You should all start thinking about what exactly you want to be, but who am I kidding? All of you are planning on becoming heroes, correct? Upon saying that, most of the students began cheering in affirmation, some of them even displaying their quirks in a non-destructive manner. Hey teach, don't lump me into the same category as these crappy side characters. Katsuki stated, the boy being in Izuku's homeroom. Izuku's thoughts on Katsuki were strange. On one hand, he admired the boy's bravery and determination. On the other hand, he was his biggest tormentor. He certainly hated the boy, but there were some aspects to him that the quirkless boy found cool. I'm off to be the best damn hero you've ever seen. Ah, right. You've mentioned that you're applying to UA, correct? His teacher asked the boy, not to anyone's surprise seeing as how much he let this fact be known. UA Academy was considered to be the best hero development school in Japan. The chances of anyone getting in were slim, yet this didn't seem to faze Katsuki, the boy having a smirk on his face. Damn right I am, I even aced the mock test. Hard. Anyone as young as Katsuki did well on the mock test, something the explosive boy clearly knew as his grin only seemed to grow bigger after his bragging. Immediately, his classmates began fawning over Katsuki as Izuku decided to dive into his own little world, not wanting to watch his classmates stroke the ego of his biggest bully like always. Midoriya, aren't you planning to apply to UA as well? Of course the teacher would bring up something Izuku said in the 4th grade. When he said this, his classmates had laughed at him and taunted him about his quirkless nature. Seeing as most of them are still in the same class as him. It was possible the teacher found out after hearing some other kid bring it up. The truth was, Izuku still wanted to go to UA and be a hero, though his motiva for even getting up in the morning was close to being destroyed. Really? Isn't he quirkless? How does he possibly think he can get into UA? One of his classmates asked, everyone else laughing. The only person who wasn't was Katsuki. Deku, Katsuki growled, not liking the fact the boy was applying to the same school as him, Deku being a nickname the boy gave him. Out of mockery. Deku was a word meaning useless. And Katsuki latched onto it, using it to mock the boy for his lack of a quirk. At first it had stung him, but with it being said more than his actual name, the boy grew immune to the negative connotations the nickname had. All right, that's enough, the teacher stated to regain control of the class, though Izuku knew that if it wasn't for the fact that the bell was about to ring, they would have continued mocking him. Thankfully, the bell did end up ringing a few minutes later, causing everyone to flood outside the room. Glad that the day was over, the boy began to pack his things. Only for someone to swipe one of his notebooks. The fuck is this? Katsuki asked out loud, making his victim nervously eye him as he had no idea what was going to happen. Well, he sort of did. But it didn't make him feel better. Hero analysis for the future 13. You really think this is going to help you? The hero analysis for the future were a series of books Izuku had written analyzing the quirks of all potential and current pro-heroes. It was his way of finding out the strengths and weaknesses of those who had similar quirks. If he was going to be a quirkless hero, he knew such knowledge would be helpful. In the background, two boys snickered, them being followers of Katsuki despite the fact he simply saw them as extras. Kei-Kachan, Izuku weakly said, referring to the nickname he gave the boy back when they were childhood friends. That book was his pride and joy, composed of years of work. It was one of the few things he was proud of. Pete, please give it back. Ignoring the boy's pleas, Katsuki gave him a devilish smirk. Listen here Deku, you should just give up trying to be a hero. You're fucking quirkless. You can't be a hero without power. Hearing this, Izuku secretly clenched his fist, unable to make eye contact with the other boy. He wanted to tell Katsuki that anyone could make a difference, no matter if they had unstable quirks or lacked one, but he couldn't. Katsuki intimidated him to no end. Boom. Asterisk. Looking up, Izuku noticed that Katsuki had activated his quirk to burn his notebook before tossing it out a window. Not wanting to lose it, he stuck his head out of the window, desperately trying to see if he could find where it fell. Like I said, no amount of research is going to cover up your flaws, Katsuki told him as he continued searching. You know, if you really want to be a hero, take a swan dive off the roof. You'll be far more useful dead, and who knows? You might even get a quirk in your next life. Horrified at what he just heard, Izuku immediately began flashing back to all the times Katsuki had picked on him. His breathing increased as his body begged him to swing at the person who made it a struggle for him to live. To shout massive profanities at him and call him out for being such a villain to him. He was seriously about to, but he ended up backing down when he noticed several small explosions coming from Katsuki's palm. Got something to say? TCH, you can't even defend yourself. Whatever, I'm done here. Watching the boys leave, Izuku clenched his fist, trying to hold back tears. In the end, he couldn't. Years of pain flooding out of him in the form of tears. Why am I so pathetic? You know, if you really want to be a hero, take a swan dive off the roof. You'll be far more useful dead, and who knows? You might even get a quirk in your next life. A 10-year-old's mind is frail. They can easily be swayed to go a certain direction. It is what happened to Izuku. Standing on a tall building, the boy was ready to end it all. Getting to the building was easy, he just used the building's fire escape to scale upwards to the roof. With him having done it behind the shadows of midnight, no one knew that he was about to jump. After so long of trying to endure what the world continued to dish out, Izuku finally had enough. He has too many scars on his body from the daily beatings. He had no help, for he was quirkless. If he'd ever to report what his once childhood friend did to him, he'd just be ignored. It's happened to him before and it'll keep on happening. At the moment, Izuku hated himself. He hated everything about himself. He hated how he was quirkless, hated how afraid he was, and he hated how he was about to take the easy way out. Sadly, he just couldn't take living in a world where he was repeatedly stomped on. Now, he knew his parents would definitely be distraught by his death, but he felt like they'd eventually get over it soon enough. After all, 80% of all quirkless people committed suicide before growing up, so they should have expected this to happen. He was going to miss them, but if the concept of heaven is real, then he'll see them soon. Clenching his fist, Izuku took a few steps back before leaping. With his eyes closed, he briefly enjoyed the sensation of gravity pulling him down before his skull had hit the ground. The sensation of something breaking and leaking out were the last things he felt before ending this chapter of his life. Now, if one were to be in his room at this time, they would have noticed the statue of Khonshu had a faint white light surrounding it, mimicking the properties of the full moon outside. With the end of one chapter comes the beginning of another. Awaken Izuku. Now is not the time to be sleeping. Who said that? Opening his eyes, Izuku found himself in a dark void. Where am I? Looking down, Izuku tried recalling the events which had led him to his current situation. I jumped and hit the ground, so what am I doing here? Is this limbo? In a way, it is. Your soul has yet to reach the afterlife because I refuse to let such a good one go to waste. That voice again. I don't see anyone, so who's talking to me? Introducing myself might ease some tension, wouldn't it? As the voice said this, a ball of white light began to shine a couple of feet away from the boy. Eventually, it dispersed. with a life-sized Khonshu sitting on some sort of throne taking its place. Hello there Izuku. I take it you know who I am. Khonshu. Honestly, Izuku couldn't believe what he was seeing. Khonshu was a myth, something the ancient Egyptians believed in once upon a time. Someone had to be messing with his head right now. I assure you, I am the real Khonshu, the god said, causing Izuku's eyes to widen at the fact he managed to read his mind. No quirk exists which can affect the dead. My power is far beyond what a quirk can hope to accomplish. Quote. Alright. Taking a deep breath in, Izuku decided to humor him. Suppose you are the real Khonshu. What does the god of the moon want with someone like me? Would you believe me if I said I want to make you my next avatar? Izuku gave him a stunned look. For the second time today, he was being told something insane. I'd say you're lying. Why would you make a quirkless boy your avatar when there are better options? Why? Oh, you think something as insignificant as a quirk matters to me? Khonshu's voice boomed, causing Izuku to realize the power emitting from him. In a way, it was crushing, enough to intimidate even All Might. Izuku now understood how powerful the supposed god was. The world is filled with people much faster, stronger, and smarter than you, but I know for a fact they will fail in being a suitable avatar. You on the other hand, even with all your imperfections, are the only one who I can say has a shot of succeeding. Quote. Izuku tilted his head in confusion. What makes you say that? Trying to express. Laying it to you would be trying to explain advanced algebra to a baby born yesterday, Khonshu said with a wave of his hand. So I'm not. Let's just say this was destined to happen. The god leaned forwards, staring into Izuku's eyes. Now, here's what's going to happen. You are going to be revived by me and will now serve as my next champion. Do not think you will be alone though, for you will. I'll have the aid of some of my worshippers and a plethora of gifts granted by me at your disposal. Do you have any questions? Quote. Despite such a bombshell being thrown at him, one he wasn't even expecting to receive. The boy only had one question. What if I refuse? We both know you aren't, Khonshu stated with confidence. Especially since you won't have to say goodbye to your family anymore. But if you do, I'll simply inhabit your body. It'll be an empty vessel which I'll use to get my way. What I'm offering is a second chance at life, a life where you can accomplish so much. On your own. Are you going to take it? Or are you going to surrender your body to me? Quote. I'll do it, Izuku said without hesitation. All Izuku ever wanted was a chance to become something greater than he is, to not be the useless Deku everyone saw him as. Khonshu was giving him this chance, so who was he to deny his request? It would also be dumb to make his family grieve for his death now that he has a reason to live. If I knew this was going to happen, I would have killed myself sooner. Excellent. Despite him not having any lips, Izuku could tell he was smiling. When you wake up, find the cult in your city dedicated to me. They will provide you with all the tools and training you'll need to succeed. Good luck. Quote. Wait, how am I? Izuku wanted to know how he was supposed to find this cult. T was silenced when Khonshu waved his bony hand, returning Izuku's soul to its body. Jolting upwards, Izuku was surprised to see he was back on Earth. This time however, he was inside an alleyway. Looking upwards, the boy managed to find the building he had jumped off of, along with receiving a nice view of the full moon. All that was real. It was then the boy felt it, the fact that his body had changed. He felt faster, stronger, and more alert to the little things surrounding him. So this is the power of Khonshu. Glancing around while trying to figure out what he was supposed to do next, he managed to find a white business card lying next to him. Picking it up, he began reading the card. Luna Cafe. Open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Come down to enjoy a nice cup of coffee or a cocktail. Initially about to toss the card to the side, upon further inspection was Izuku able to find a hidden message in the card, one he found when some moonlight began hitting it when he turned around. He only saw it for a split second, but he knew what the message had said. Praise Khonshu. Wasting no time, Izuku typed up the address of the cafe into his phone and began running. It was time to meet some of his future allies. Ding! Arriving at the cafe, Izuku took a seat and began looking around. The place was quite small and despite its ties to Khonshu, there was nothing to indicate this fact. Sure, the place was painted white, but this gave it the illusion that the cafe took inspiration from the cafes in the United States built in the 1970s. Stretching his back, the boy began looking at the menu, only being interrupted when an older man made his way to him. You know, most kids your age would be asleep by now, the man said to Izuku. So what brings you to my humble cafe? Looking up from the menu, Izuku responded without missing a beat. I'm waiting for some friends. When the words left his mouth, he couldn't help but blink in confusion. The boy Hone Streetley had no idea where this sudden surge of confidence he was feeling was coming from. He'd normally be a stuttering mess by now, afraid to even meet the cult. Right now though, he wasn't even remotely nervous. Why was this? Is it because of experienced death? I see, the man eyed Izuku with a mysterious gleam in his eyes. Well, we've all been waiting for you, Izuku Midoriya, champion of Khonshu. 10 years to be exact. My name's Tasuki Hoshi and I am the Grand Priest of this section of the cult of Khonshu. Our Divine Lord has been told me of your arrival in advance. Come, it's time to beg. In your path to becoming a true avatar of the night. Nodding, Izuku followed the man to the back of the cafe to the kitchen. With a press of a remote he had taken out of the pocket, Tasuki revealed a secret staircase behind the fridge, appearing to go underground. Having done so, the man smiled at the boy. Shall we? Wasting no time, Izuku began making his way down the stairs, the man following behind him. Welcome to our sacred sanctuary, Tasuki said once they reached the bottom of the staircase. Looking around, Izuku noticed the place looked exactly like some sort of ancient temple. Torches were the only things keeping the place lit. There were several hieroglyphics on the walls, and all the way at the wall parallel to the entrance exit was a large statue of Khonshu. The only parts of the church that were slightly modern were the steel doors located at the left wall and the various chairs littered around the floor. We've taken great care in modeling it after the grounds of worship used during the ancient times. If need be, you can use this place as a sanctuary. You said, we're waiting for me, Izuku pointed out, surprised to see there wasn't anyone else here besides the two. Where is everyone? You'll meet them soon enough, Tasuki replied before continuing his speech. Despite our negative status as a cult, we have members rooted everywhere in society. The man then pointed towards the two doors. Behind those two steel doors is our laboratory. We have some of the greatest scientists in all of Japan working on equipment for you to use. Gesturing around the room, Tasuki continued his explanation. You'll be receiving some combat training from one of Japan's best fighters. While our God has given you some power, there will still be those stronger than you. So you'll need to be prepared to face these types of opponents. Izuku nodded in understanding. Now, it will take a bit for you to finally be ready to go out and do the work of Khonshu, which is why I request you come here every night around this time to train. Have any questions? Izuku shook his head with a small smile. Who knew a cult had so many resources? Good. Now, today was more of an introductory day. So no training will be done today. You will start tomorrow. Allow me to drive you home. Having managed to sneak back into his home before his mother could even notice he was gone, the next day went by quickly for Izuku. With it being a Sunday, he simply took the time to rest and do his homework. When midnight struck, he snuck out of his house like he did the day before and made his way to Luna Cafe where Tasuki brought him to the underground church. This time, instead of it only being them two, another man was present, sitting on one of the various chairs in the room. Seeing them, the man stood up, revealing how massive he was compared to the other two males. Upon taking a good look at Izuku, the man turned his attention towards Tasuki. This the squirt? Yes. Glancing at Izuku, the head priest began to introduce the two to one another. Midoriya, this is Iwao Oguro. He will be your combat instructor. Oguro, well, I don't think you need any introduction to Midoriya. You've mentioned him enough. The man grunted in a carefree manner before focusing on Izuku. Well, like Hoshi said, I'll be the one whipping your butt into shape. As the vigilante knuckleduster, Avenue a butt-ton of experience fighting villains and pro-heroes alike. I'll make sure that you'll be ready to survive out there in no time. I'm being trained by the knuckleduster. Izuku thought excitedly in his mind. Knuckleduster is a name the boy was familiar with, being the most famous vigilante in Japan. He has defeated various opponents more powerful than him with just skill alone. As he's hardly seen in the spotlight due to vigilantism being illegal, his quirk is unknown. Some say it's a strength-enhancing quirk while others believed it to be a speed-enhancing one. Judging by your eyes, I can tell you're familiar with me. Iwao stated. Just for the record, I'm quirkless, so don't think I've had any help in my fights. Izuku's eyes widened upon hearing this, his respect for the Ma-en having grown tremendously upon hearing this. I'm the real deal when it comes to hand-to-hand combat. Now, you'll be having some of Khonshu's power to aid you. Add that onto the skills I'll be teaching you and the tech you'll be given. You'll be a force to be reckoned with. Ready to become a warrior of the moon. Izuku wasted no time in responding. I am. Good. With a smirk, Iwao smashed his knuckles together. Your training starts now. 2 years was how long it took for Izuku to finally be deemed ready to go out and fight crime. During this time, many things have happened to the boy. For starters, he ended up discovering all the powers that Khonshu has given him. With Tusky's help, he discovered he could turn invisible when in dim light or darkness and that he had night vision. NSHU also increased his physical strength, though how potent they were depended on the cycles of the moon. With no moon shining, his strength capped out at 1 ton. When only a crescent was in the sky, he could lift about 1.5 tons. When half the moon was being illuminated, his strength increased to 2 tons. A gibbous allowed him to lift 2.5 tons. At a full moon was when he was most powerful, benching an impressive 3 tons. It should be noted that his strength also increased when he was in darkness, no moon necessary. However, it only increased his strength equal to T hat of when half the moon was being radiated outside. By far his favorite power though was his extreme pain tolerance and endurance, which allowed him to be active for long periods of time while also allowing him to take hits which would normally knock him out. Again, Knuckleduster roared at Izuku during one of their spars. Despite having been knocked down, Izuku jumped right back up, ready to go another round. Shooting forwards, Izuku threw a punch the same time Knuckleduster threw one, causing both combatants to take a heavy blow. Such blows would have knocked out lesser men, but both Izuku and Knuckleduster were still rearing to go. Training with the vigilante always went like this. No matter how much he was beaten down by Knuckleduster during training, he'd keep fighting until he was knocked out. With the intensity of his training alongside his enhanced strength and endurance during the night, it only took him 2 years to be near Knuckleduster's level in hand-to-hand combat. As it turns out, the vigilante knew a variety of fighting styles, such as Kung Fu, Eskrima, Judo, Karate, Ninjutsu, Savate, Muay Thai, and his personal favorite boxing, all of which he taught to Izuku. Alongside Izuku's hand-to-hand combat skills increasing, his natural speed, agility, and stealth capabilities also received immense growth due to his training, allowing him to slip away from his bullies without notice. Since his revival, Izuku had also changed mentally. While already quite intelligent before his training, the cult has tutored him to the point where he could be considered a genius. His bravery has also increased to the point he feared nothing. I've already died, was Izuku's mindset. What's left for me to be afraid of? Unfortunately, not all his growth has been positive. For starters, he was a bit more abrasive than before, struggling to not snap at the people who've made his life a living hell. The only reason he hasn't beaten Katsuki to a bloody pulp at this point was due to the fact that the school would defend him to their grave, declaring Izuku the bad guy. He was still registered as quirkless, something his god had told him to do during one of their chats. Yes, Khonshu would often appear to Izuku as a spirit only he could see. Sometimes, they'd engage in small talk. Other times, Khonshu would command Izuku to do something or inform him about something related to his training. I don't understand why I can't just claim one of my gifts as my quirk, Izuku told his god during their conversation. You see your quirklessness as a weakness, but in reality, it is one of your greatest strengths. Khonshu replied to him, quote, someone with a quirk cannot be a vigilante, and there's no other way you can carry out my orders as a hero. No one will be able to see you either unless you do something foolish. You blend in with the everyday man, which makes you all the more dangerous. Quote, oh, and don't get him started on the voices. Ever since he was resurrected, they'd plague him. attempting to influence his decisions. Some were morally just while others wished for him to go down a darker path. Where they came from, he didn't know. All he wanted was for them to shut up. He's almost had a mental breakdown in school due to their constant torment. While he was able to hold them off for now, he wasn't sure how long he continued doing so. Where the hell are they coming from? Izuku yelled one night in his room, clenching his head. Too much was going on inside it to the point where he couldn't tell who he was, the voices each saying different things. The worst part about it is they all sounded just like him, so he didn't know what he was thinking and what they were thinking. Raising from the dead is a strenuous task, even with the aid of a god such as myself, Khonshu answered. Damage is to be expected. Fuck, if I knew it was this bad, I would have stayed dead. This was something Izuku would tell himself sometimes. However, he knew he didn't mean this. The chance Khonshu gave him was more than enough of a blessing to keep pushing through. At least, that's his opinion on the subject. Izuku's sudden change didn't sit too well with his school bullies. For the most part, they just saw him as creepy and kept their distance. Katsuki however took Izuku's lack of fear towards him as a challenge, making their relationship worse than it already was. After his death, any care Izuku had for the explosive blonde had burned to the ground. Katsuki was so lucky he had the school protecting him, otherwise he would have lost his jaw already. As for his relationship with his parents, nothing's really changed other than the fact he was a bit less social with them. Whenever they asked to see if something was bothering him, he'd just tell them he was tired. Something which wasn't a complete lie. Dealing with the voices in his head and the people at school were enough to drain his energy. However, he was much closer to his dad than his mom, especially since it turns out his dad was a worshipper of Khonshu. Eventually, he would be able to put his newfound skills and abilities to the test as the legendary Moon Knight, becoming a thorn for villains everywhere. TCH. No one's out tonight, Izuku mumbled to himself as he stared down the roof of a building. Today was his first night being a vigilante and he's surprisingly not fought any criminals yet. For the costume he wore, it consisted of a white mask, white hood which appeared to look like a crescent, a white cape, and a white bodysuit. All portions of the suit excluding the hood and cape were made of a powerful metal known as carbodium. According to the scientists who designed the suit, it could withstand a great deal of punishment. For weapons, he had several crescent ped throwing discs which were sharp enough to cut steel. Some of them also had unique properties to them, such as being able to explode upon impact or electrocute opponents upon touching them. Finally, in terms of close-ranged weaponry, he had a retractable staff, a crescent-shaped dagger, and a pair of gloves which would send shockwaves whenever he punched someone. Of course, he had the ability to turn them on and off. There was a specific reason why he chose to wear white, it was to make opponents fear him. Fear was a powerful force, so powerful that it could shut down even the most powerful of foes. And fear was highly contagious. Some chose to hide in the shadows to inflict fear, the thought of being struck out of nowhere being enough for lesser men to give up any thoughts they have of turning to crime. Izuku didn't like this as he felt there was a much better way of scaring off criminals: make yourself known. He wanted criminals to see him, wearing all white, so they know they messed up. The fact that any blood spilled would easily noticeable on his white costume was a plus. Now, the suit does make him easier to be spotted by pro heroes, but with his invisibility along with some flash bangs and smoke bombs, he was confident with his ability to evade them. Then again, he wasn't doing anything illegal, so he was fine. He just hated dealing with their questioning. I guess I'm going to go home. With nothing going on, the boy decided it would be best for him to head home. However, as he was turning around, he managed to see some blue light coming from an alleyway, it being followed by a loud thud, and some yelling. Knowing full well there might be some trouble going on over there, Izuku began leaping from building top to building top so he could get to the source of conflict quickly. The young boy who referred to himself only as Dabi was not having a good day. Then again, when was he ever? Ever since he ran away from his family for reasons he refuses to explain, he's had to live off the streets. In his life, there was no certainty to whether he was going to see another day. Starvation and dehydration were always constant threats, along with being targeted by psychopaths. To solve his issue with food and water, he had to resort to stealing. With his fire quirk known as cremation, he'd distract stand owners before stealing an apple or something around that size. Unfortunately, such methods only provided him with the minimal amount of food he needed to survive. There would be weeks where he'd go a few days without eating, such as this one. Days Lee. K today or why I think I should say, fuck it, and be a villain, a malnourished Dobby thought to himself as he scarcely avoided a blow from a muscular man. All Dobby wanted was something to eat, so he took an orange from a stand which had been open tonight. Unfortunately, he wasn't as sneaky as he thought he was and the owner of the stand ended up catching him in the act. Usually whenever he was caught, the stand owners would settle with shouting profanities at him. This guy on the other hand was a whole new breed of crazy. He ended up chasing Dobby to an alley where he was attempting to make sure the boy paid for what he stole. Normally, Dobby would have ended the fight quickly. He had a powerful fire quirk and from what he's seen so far, the man only had a low-level strength-enhancing quirk. Sadly, fatigue was taking over. The time he spent running having drained whatever energy he had left. He couldn't even summon his flames for more than a second. Perhaps if he had started disregarding human life would he be able to easily protect his own. After all, this was a world which seemingly took pleasure in stomping out those who play nice. Maybe it was time to stop caring about anyone besides himself. Holding his head, Dobby watched as the man began walking towards him. He tried summoning his flames again, but all that happened was his hands glowed a bright blue before shimmering down, collapsing on the ground in defeat. He waited for the man to bash his skull in. The moment never came though, for he had heard the man grunt as concrete broke beside him. Opening his eyes, the boy was met face to face with some sort of crescent-throwing dart embedded in the concrete floor. Looking towards his attacker, he noticed he was looking towards the top of a roof. Following where he was looking at, Dobby saw an individual dressed in all white. It didn't take a rocket scientist to know that he was the one who had thrown the disc. Unknown to either of them, the boy in white was Izuku Midoriya, now known as the Vigilante Moon Knight. Jumping off the 6-story building, Izuku landed in between the two. Taking one good look at the muscular man, the boy only had one thing to say to him. His voice distorted by his mask to make him sound older than he really was. "Leave. Who the fuck are you?" the man shouted, angry at the boy for getting in his way. "Just someone stopping a psychopath from killing a kid. The little shit stole from me. Looks to me like you're upset he took an orange from you." It was the only thing Dobby had on him besides his worn-out clothing. "Now, I'll say it again. Leave or I will drop you." Quote, "I'd like to see you try." As the man prepared himself to fight, Izuku couldn't help but smile. Fighting was something which helped him relieve stress, and he had a lot of stress built up from today. Typically, Izuku would have been the first one to make a move, but the man ended up going first. Throwing a right hook, he was hoping to end the fight in an instant. However, with all the fighting training he has received along with the boost of speed he was getting from the full moon outside, Izuku saw his attack from a mile away. Sidestepping out of the way, Izuku threw a punch of his own, shattering the man's nose. Fuck. A torrent of blood was spewing out of his nose, some of which had landed on Izuku's suit when his fist made contact with his target. Holding his nose, the man was about to go for another punch, only for a gloved fist to make contact with the hand covering his nose. With the pain of his broken nose being hit and the pain that came with Izuku shattering the bones in his hand, the man immediately went unconscious in a pool of his own blood. Too easy. Rolling his eyes, Izuku flipped the man so he was lying on his stomach. He then made his way to the boy he had saved. "Are you okay?" Quote, "Why yeah." This was a lie seeing as he passed out from exhaustion a second later. Sighing, Izuku picked up the boy and began walking back to the cult. The head priest owns a cafe after all and something to eat and drink was exactly what the homeless boy needed. The smell of ramen was what ended up waking Dobby from unconsciousness. Sitting up, the boy noticed he was lying down on the floor of what appeared to be a church. Taking a quick look around, he ended up finding Izuku in his Moon Knight costume seated next to him, having watched over him. "Where am I?" Dobby asked the masked individual, only for him to hand him the bowl of ramen. "Eat first, ask questions later." Quote, with how good the ramen smelled, Dobby didn't need to be asked twice. He quickly scarfed down the ramen, the feeling of it entering his stomach feeling extremely satisfying. When he finished with his food, he glanced back at the vigilante. Thanks. Now, where am I? You're in the church of Khonshu, Izuku responded, causing the other male to shoot him a confused glance. Church of who now? Doesn't matter right now. All that does is that you're safe now. Feel free to use this place to recuperate. When you want to leave, let me know and I'll point you to the exit. Quote. Dabi nodded as he began to peel the orange he had taken. The two sat in silence while the boy munched on his fruit. Eventually, Dabi decided to ask Izuku something. So, what are you? Some kind of pro-hero? Izuku shook his head, picking up a level of aggression from the boy upon him saying the word, hero. No, I'm too young to be a hero. I guess you can call me a vigilante. Sounds to me like you don't like heroes. TCH, I don't. They're the reason I'm like this. What do you mean? Quote. Honestly, Dabi had nothing to lose by sharing some information to Izuku, so he did, wanting a chance to vent. The way the hero system is set up, being popular takes over being a good person. My father's a well-respected pro, but is a shitty human at home. I had to run away due to how he treated my family and I. Sounds to me like he was only a hero in name, Izuku replied, disgusted by the older boy's father. Again, another silence surrounded the two, Izuku being the one to break it this time. So, what are you going to do after this? Quote. Dabi shrugged. Probably try finding somewhere to hang out for a bit. I hear there's going to be a rough storm in a few days. Why does it matter to you? Well, I was thinking of getting you a job and a place to stay, Izuku replied. He had no idea why he was helping this boy, to be honest. Maybe it was because he could sympathize with him, having been beaten down himself to the point where he really only had himself to rely on. It was simply the fact he was homeless. Whatever it was, Izuku didn't think too hard about it as right now, all he saw was someone who needed help. The high priest owns a cafe upstairs and cool. Do you use a bit of help with maintaining the church? Maybe you could do one of those and live here for the time being. I can convince him to pay you and give you free food. What do you say? I mean, it definitely beats living outside. Dabi skeptically looked at him. You just met me. Why the hell are you offering me a job and somewhere to live? I don't know, Izuku said with a shrug. Something about you speaks to me, and it would be a shame if you were to keep living on the streets. Also, helping others is what a real hero would do. Quote. If you're serious about the offer, then I'd be a fool to not take it, Dabi said. What do you need me to do? Well, let me introduce you to the high priest first. He'll be the one in charge of giving you a job. Taking off his mask, Izuku smiled at the boy. But welcome aboard anyways. When he did this, Dabi gave him a stupefied glance, one thing on his mind now. The fuck? You're like only 12. When Izuku introduced Tsuki to Dabi, the man as all for allowing him to stay at the church. Even though he was the high priest, he saw Izuku as his higher up, seeing as he was the champion of Khonshu. Whatever Izuku wanted, it was his duty to grant it. Though Izuku told him time and time again that such dedication wasn't necessary. Needless to say, Dabi was given the job of janitor duty for the church. While the pay wasn't anything special, he had free lounging and food. So he couldn't complain, especially seeing as there were no toilets for him to clean. With Dabi being a resident of the church now, it allowed the two to bond. What star? Ted, as Izuku questioning him about his quirk, blossomed into a powerful friendship. Almost no secrets were kept from the other, Izuku even managing to learn Dabi's birth name. Granted, Dabi was skeptic about the whole idea of Khonshu and was very confused when he heard of Izuku being revived from death, but he learned to stop questioning the validity of the story. Whether it was real or not had nothing to do with him. During the first year of their friendship, the persona of Moon Knight would end up becoming a rather famous one. Other than how his suit looks like, no one knew anything about E-boy other than the fact he often beat villains to the brink of death. Obviously, he didn't do this to all of them, but any who had something like murder and rape on their minds would be beaten to an inch of their lives. It was Izuku's way of warning any aspiring villains as to what was awaiting them if they chose to continue down such a path. Pro heroes have tried to stop him, but with his powers, skill, and gadgets, He'd always manage to evade them. When using his gifts though, he made sure to make it seem like he was quirkless. Vigilantism was illegal after all, but as Khonshu told him, as long as he didn't engage in combat with an off-duty villain or start the fight, what he was doing was technically considered to be self-defense by the law. If he had a quirk, he'd be tried for using it to fight crime. He didn't have one though, so as long as he wasn't the aggressor, he was fine, much to the frustration of the pro-heroes. Funny enough, Dabi wasn't the only person Izuku would end up offering refuge to during his time as a vigilante. During that year, Izuku ended up bringing another homeless person to the church, the person being a girl with blonde hair who was as old as he was. Izuku, now 13 years of age, was surveying the city of Japan as Moon Knight once again. Having gotten into several brawls that night, there were several patches of blood on his suit, all of which were from his enemies. With most villains being sloppy fighters who were over-reliant on their quirks, the boy has hardly gotten hurt while on the job. Of course, there have been a few instances here a villain managed to land a good hit or two on him, but he was still able to prevail in the end. Wow, that's a lot of blood on you, a feminine voice stated, causing the vigilante to turn around. Upon doing so, he was met with the sight of a short blonde girl with her hair in two buns. Based on the way she was looking at him, Izuku could tell she was definitely dangerous. Is it yours? No. His eyes continued to watch her like a hawk. There was no way he was letting her out of his sight. The girl didn't seem bothered by this though. In fact, it seemed like she was actually enjoying the attention. Well, if it's not yours, then it definitely came from someone else, the girl stated in excitement, causing Izuku to blink in confusion. What was with this girl? Does this mean you love blood? Her eyes began shining in glee, prompting Izuku to secretly pull out some of his crescent discs. Man, I love blood. It's really pretty and it tastes so good. What's your name, my new blood friend? I'm Himiko Toga. Izuku would have to be an idiot to respond. Thankfully, he was not, so he kept his mouth shut. Himiko, realizing she wasn't going to get a reply, pouted. You're not much of a talker, are you? Well, if you're not going to talk to me, can I have some of your blood? I'm hungry and I haven't had some in such a long time. Again, she was met with silence, causing to pout once again. Well, if you're not going to answer me, I guess it means I'll be taking your blood by force. In the blink of an eye, Himiko whipped out 2 daggers and tossed them at the vigilante. Most would have been caught off guard by this, but not Izuku. Throwing 2 crescent darts, he managed to knock them out of the air before they hit him. Seeing this, the girl's smile widened. I didn't think I'd be having so much fun with my first target. Pulling out 2 more daggers, Himiko rushed in, eager to make the boy bleed. Going for an overhead stab, she was surprised to see him block it with a dagger of his own. She then attempted to stab him with her other dagger, only for him to push her back and strike her with a roundhouse kick to the side, sending her back a few feet. First target, so you haven't killed before? Izuku asked her as she began standing up. Whipping out 2 more daggers, she shot him a small smile. Nope, you'll be my first. Taking a deep breath, the girl suddenly vanished from his view. Instead of looking around for her like most fighters would, Izuku opted to use his senses to predict where she might try to attack him. Knuckleduster was adept at nishing into thin air despite his big stature, and he would often do so during training. Izuku had to learn how to counter it, and learn he did. Sensing something present to his left, he ducked Himiko's attempt at cutting his mask before elbowing her side. Why are you trying to kill me? You some kind of psychopath? Nope, I just really like blood. I have ever since I got my quirk, Himiko said as she rushed in again. This time, Izuku pulled out his retractable staff and began blocking her attacks. Unknown to the girl, that one piece of information about her quirk was all that was needed to change Izuku's mind about how badly he was going to beat her. During his research on quirks, he's read about how they can affect a person's psyche. In Himiko's case, her bloodlust was most likely related to her quirk, whatever it was. He had a theory on how he could stop the girl before she killed someone, but it required him to knock her out. Continuously blocking her attacks, the boy began looking for an opening he could use to finish the battle. His last 2 hits had definitely dealt some nice damage, so he was sure a third one would be enough to finish the job. Eventually, he found his op. Ending when the girl went for a diagonal slash, making her head open to retaliation if he took the attack. Deciding it was worth the risk, he allowed her to nick his neck before throwing a powerful headbutt, knocking her out. With his opponent down for the count, Izuku tapped the side of his mask, it having a secret communicator installed. "Hey Dabi, it's me. Mind trying to buy a pint of blood for me? I'll explain when I get back." When Himiko woke up, she found herself in the church of Konshu with Izuku and Dabi seated next to her. In the still masked Izuku's hands were a pint of blood. Quote, "You're lucky the Quirk Accommodation Center was still open," Dabi, now 16 years old, remarked to Izuku as the girl began to awaken. Izuku simply nodded. "I know." Seeing her movement from the corner of his eye, Izuku began to place all his attention towards her. "Hey, nice to see you're awake." He then handed her the pint of blood. "Drink." Himiko, always willing to have some free blood, took his offer and began downing her drink. As she did, Izuku noticed how her body began to calm down, no longer jittery and shaky like it was when they were fighting. "Feel better?" Izuku asked, causing her to nod. "Good." Now, Himiko was a smart girl. She knew the boy she had been fighting was either a vigilante or a hero. Chances are, they were going to hand her over to the cops. However, seeing as he brought her to a safe place and had given her blood, there was a chance he wanted something from her. "So, what are you going to do with me now?" "Depends on how you answer my questions," Izuku replied truthfully. "First off, you have any place to stay?" Quote, "Nah, I'm homeless," Himiko admitted, her smile not faltering one bit. Izuku nodded. While he assumed she was based on her clothes, he still wanted to make sure. "Alright. Secondly, what's your quirk?" Quote, "My quirk allows me to transform into anyone whose blood I drink," Himiko said with a smile. Izuku was honestly surprised at how willing she was to answer his questions. "Is that what makes you crazy for blood?" Quote, "Yep. If I don't drink a pint of blood for a week, I get a bit hungry. Otherwise I'm perfectly normal." "I doubt that last part," Izuku muttered to himself. "So let me get this straight. As long as you have blood, you won't go around killing people." "Yep, though I do like seeing it all over people." Izuku nodded in understanding. So far, what he got from the girl in front of him was the fact her quirk was what was causing her bloodlust. Seeing as he was supposed to be her first victim, she's been homeless for about a week. It was decided, he was going to offer her the same opportunity he offered Dabi. "Last question. If you promise me that you won't kill anybody, I can get you a job. A place to stay, free food and water. And free blood for you every week. Would you be willing to do that?" Quote, upon being asked this, Himiko's smile faded, being replaced with an analytical frown. The fact that a stranger was offering to help her after learning about his condition was surprising to her. There was most likely some sort of catch to this. "What sort of job?" "Mostly cleaning, or cooking if you're into that," Dabi responded, causing her to look at him. "He offered me the same deal about a year ago. Like you, I was once homeless, but taking this deal ended up getting me off the streets. Trust me, it's a good deal. I'd also hate to see you become a criminal just because you can't control your quirk," Izuku admitted. "The choice is yours to make. Just know that if you refuse and I find you killing someone, I won't go easy on you." Quote. Himiko stood silent for a few moments, thinking on her decision. Eventually, she came up with her answer, her smile returning once again. "I accept." It was like Dabi said. This was a great offer. "Good." Taking off his mask, Izuku smiled at the girl. "Welcome aboard." When he did so, Himiko's smile turned into a predatory one. Seeing how cute the boy behind the mask was, she knew she was in love. Oh, how much she wanted to make him bleed. With the addition of Himiko to the group, things were certainly more lively throughout the next year of Izuku's life. The girl always had a smile on her face, not letting anything get her down. It should be noted that legal custody was transferred from Himiko and Dabi's parents to the church. Himiko's parents ended up getting arrested for child neglect while Dabi's father, him being the only reachable parent at the time, ended up getting off scot-free. How he managed to do so was something Izuku didn't understand. Sure, he was a top pro. Hero and everything, but the fact he managed to continue keeping his abandonment of his child a secret was something Izuku couldn't wrap his head around. But Dabi and Himiko ended up being homeschooled, something Dabi was fine with. Himiko however wanted to be with her precious, Izu-kun, as she lovingly called him, but Izuku told her to wait until high school to no longer be homeschooled. Speaking of the girl, she had started developing a habit of trying to lightly cut Izuku's cheeks as she could see him bleed. The boy found it good combat training, he was fine with her doing it as long as it was only to him. Both Dabi and Himiko ended up being homeschooled, something Dabi was fine with. Himiko however wanted to be with her precious, Izu-kun, as she lovingly called him. But Izuku told her to wait until high school to no longer be homeschooled. Speaking of the girl, she had started developing a habit of trying to lightly cut Izuku's cheeks as she could see him bleed. The boy found it good combat training, so he was fine with her doing it as long as it was only to him. The two have also received combat training from the church, making them capable of beating any common thug in a fight. Hell, like Izuku, they could take on any low-level hero and even mid-level heroes with some prep. Compared to Izuku who had to endure hell and back with Knuckleduster. Dabi and Himiko simply worked with other members of the church, making Izuku more skilled, though the distance between them wasn't very large. Both had to survive on the streets after all, so they had skill to begin with. However, due to Izuku's analytical prowess, they've become far more proficient with their quirks. The reason the church bothered training them was to make sure Izuku had some allies available as backup if he were to find himself in a tight situation while playing vigilante. Izuku however preferred to work alone as Moon Knight, the reason being that he didn't want anyone he cared about to get hurt. Oddly enough, this contrasted with the fact that Izuku adored being around his two friends in all other parts of his life. They were irreplaceable to him. Speaking of which, the boy always felt Izuku Midoriya and Moon Knight were two different people. Izuku needed others near him to make sure his deteriorating mind didn't shatter, his mental problems popping out whenever he was alone. Moon Knight didn't, he was a loner who was able to convert his mental instability into a weapon. Izuku couldn't fight against a world which shot him down. He was just a STEPing stone for other people and he couldn't do anything about it unless he wanted to risk ending his life. Moon Knight dared for someone to try to oppress him. They'd be lucky to walk away with only a broken limb. It was funny. After his death, Izuku felt as if life had gotten better for him. As Moon Knight, he was someone who's done what he's always wanted to, save people. Having Himiko and Dabi around was also an immense blessing for reasons already explained. Oddly enough, despite him feeling this way, everything else about his life was arguably worse. His brain has been shattered into a million pieces. Katsuki was still picking on him, and the world continued to spit on him. Add the fact he has to deal with all this together and he was struggling more than he was before his death. Still, it was too early to determine if Izuku was right or wrong about feeling the way he does about his life. After all, his story's only beginning. Shota Aizawa, otherwise known as the pro-hero Eraserhead, was a tired individual. Such a thing should be expected from a man who worked as an underground hero during the night while teaching at the prestigious UA Academy during the day. Granted, he expelled all of his homeroom class during the first day of classes, but he still had to grade stuff from all the other classes he taught. Today was one of the few days in which he was supposed to have time to himself. Sadly, it seems like he was needed by the principal before he could relax. Knock knock. Come in, a voice said from the other side of the door leading into the principal's office. Upon entering, he was greeted with the sight of a dog-bear-mouse creature sitting behind the principal's desk. Funny enough, this creature was the principal, having an intelligence-heightening quirk which made him one of the smartest beings to ever exist on Earth. Wanting to get the meeting over with, Shota sat down. Afternoon Principal Nezu. You called for me. Indeed I have, the animal said with a smile. As you know, recommendations will be given out to potential students soon. Shota nodded. What about them? Recommendations were quite the big deal. Any student who was nominated or won by the staff or any of the current top 10 heroes essentially had two chances at getting accepted to UA early. These hopeful students were given a different exam at an earlier date compared to those taking the main one. With the chances of getting in as a recommended student being lower than getting in the normal way, any who don't make the cut do have a shot at getting in if they do well in the exam open to all. As expected though, getting a recommendation was a rare event. You had to impress a staff member and/or a top 10 pro hero, which was an extremely hard task. Heck, neither Nez, you or him have ever given out recommendations, something he had a feeling wasn't going to change. Of course, Shota should have known by now that Nezu's behavioral patterns couldn't be predicted. Well, before I continue, I need a favor from you. What is it? I've heard you've had a run-in with the vigilante Moon Knight. Tell me a bit about that. Not sure why the principal wanted to hear him tell this story. The man began to do so anyways, not having any reason not to. Flashback. 2 weeks ago, Eraserhead had been patrolling the streets of Japan, doing his job. Ever since All Might had moved to Japan about a week ago, the crime levels have been decreasing significantly. This didn't mean that criminals have been silenced, far from it. They were still around, especially seeing as All Might seemed to work during certain periods of time. Leaping from roof to roof, the pro hero remained in the shadows, ambush tactics being his preferred method of attacking. His quirk, Erasure, allowed him to erase the quirks of whomever he looked at as long as their quirk wasn't a mutation one. With this, along with his capturing weapon he wore as a scarf and his insane levels of hand-to-hand combat skills, he was a dangerous enemy to any villain. The only way to stop him without a mutation quirk was to get the drop on him, hence why he relied on ambush tactics. Eventually, his search ended up ducking some results as he heard yelling coming from a nearby alleyway. Upon arriving at the scene, the man saw 3 other grown men on the floor, blood filling the alleyway. In the middle was the vigilante known as Moon Knight, blood staining his usually white costume. Despite both having similar patterns to their patrols, the two never ran into one another, so such a sight was a surprise to the pro hero. Staying in the shadows, he began observing the vigilante, waiting for a chance to strike. Despite the fact it was technically legal for Izuku to be out patrolling, it was still a mystery as to whether he actually had a quirk. With Eraserhead being one of the few who could actually determine if someone was using a quirk by using his own, he knew a showdown with the vigilante was needed. Eventually, the hero got his chance when Izuku turned his back towards the criminals he had beaten down. Launching his capture weapon, he was surprised when Izuku managed to avoid the incoming projectile before launching one of his own. Avoiding it, the pro hero took the spot where the downed criminals were, making sure to keep his eyes on the boy. Eraserhead. Moon Knight. For what do I owe the pleasure of seeing you? Quote. You probably already know, but vigilantism is illegal, the pro hero informed him. You had a good run, but it's time for it to end. Ah, but I'm not legally considered a vigilante, Izuku said. I've not instigated any fight nor have I used a quirk. I'm perfectly fine. Quote. The first point is true, Shota admitted. But there's no way to prove you are quirkless. Unless I bring you into the police station for questioning. We can either do this the easy way, or the hard way. Izuku shook his head. I can't come with you. There's a reason I wear a mask after all. TCH, very well then. The hard way it is. Wasting no time, Shota launched his capture weapon at the boy, only for him to dodge it before retaliating with another crescent dart, which the pro hero managed to avoid yet again. Unknown to Shota, Izuku was paying close attention to his movements. Knuckleduster had warned him about Eraserhead, he being one of the few people who managed to fight on equal terms with him. If Eraserhead was as good as his mentor said he was, then fighting him wasn't a good option. Instead of victory, he needed to seek a way out. Realizing he was getting nowhere with his capture weapon, Shota rushed forwards, ready to engage in some good old hand-to-hand combat. His first and second blows were blocked by Izuku. His third one however managed to nail the boy in the cheek, causing him to stagger. Wasting no time, Shota went for another punch, striking his opponent yet again. Unknown to him, Izuku had let him hit him that second time, for he would be in a posy Tion where he wouldn't be able to avoid retaliation strike. Throwing a quick jab, he managed to send the pro hero flying, much to Shota's surprise. During the entire fight, he had been using his quirk, making the pro hero believe that his strength was natural. Of course, this wasn't true, his strength being heightened by the new moon outside. Seeing the brief flash of confusion in the man's face, Izuku threw another crescent at him. Eraserhead managed to dodge it yet again, this time with more ease than before. Before he had the time to wonder why this was, the crescent exploded in a blinding light, revealing that it was a flashbang. When the pro-hero's eyes returned to normal, Moon Knight was nowhere to be seen, having taken the chance to flee. Cursing under his breath, shots began climbing up the fire escape on one of the buildings making up the alleyway, hoping that he could find the vigilante. Sadly, he never did. And that's pretty much what happened, the teacher mumbled under his breath. The kid played it smart. Interesting. Having finished taking notes of Shota's story, Nezu began smiling. I was right in sending him a recommendation letter. Shota had to double-check that he heard right. The principal of UA, a being with some of the highest standards, just gave away a letter of recommendation to a vigilante. Pardon me. I've been following him since his debut and I have to say, I'm impressed, Nezu stated. With no quirk, he has managed to win every single one of his fights thus far, besides the one with you of course. He's also very intelligent, relying on the weaknesses of his opponent's quirks to win fights. He sort of reminds me of you. How did you even find out who he was? That's for me, and only me, to know, the principal replied with a self-satisfying grin. Knowing that he wasn't going to get a real answer anytime soon, Shota decided to ask another question instead. Are you sure it's alright to bring a vigilante to this school? Yo. You know the public will go nuts if they ever find out the infamous Moon Knight was attending UA. Nezu smiled darkly at this. Trust me, everything will work out. This school needs more unconventional heroes like him anyways. Izuku Midoriya, otherwise known as the vigilante Moon Knight, was a trouble magnet. Getting involved with the lives of Dabi and Himiko were proof of this, though it ended up working out in the end. He was able to get the companionship he lacked and they were able to get a second chance at life. Personally, Izuku didn't mind the fact he seemed so prone to such situation. It just made it easier to find and destroy the villains plaguing society, people he. Even when thrown into conflict with people who could easily kill him, he went all out, refusing to let them get away. He had made a vow to never give up on the will of his god and those who needed him. So even if he lost, he would continue to throw himself at his opponent until they were silenced. He was willing to do whatever it took to stop villains from hurting others, whether it be by inflicting physical or mental trauma onto them or by killing them. The means of which he'd do so didn't matter to him. All that did was that ensuring that they can never hurt anyone again. Initially, his resolve had yet to be significantly tested as the criminals he fought during the start of his vigilante escapades were all low-leveled thugs. Such was about to change today though. With no crime occurring around his typical route, Izuku had decided to branch out a bit farther. Going into the next town over, he ended up hearing a massive shockwave go off, followed by the sound of water splashing against a hard surface. Naturally, Izuku began making his way to the source of the noise, leaping from building to building. Upon arriving, he was met with the sight of two individuals with water-based quirks fighting someone with a strength-enhancing quirk. Being the hero nerd he was, he could identify the three individuals. The two with water-based quirks were the Water Horse duo. Composed of husband and wife, the two had the ability to create and manipulate large bodies of water by expanding the size of the water molecules in the air. One might wonder why the two have practically the same quirk despite not being related by blood, but such a coincidence was quite common. Most fire-based quirks were the same, with only their intensities and mastery over such a quirk differing. Dabi was one of the few whose fire quirk had a unique property, him being able to manipulate his flames even after they left his body. The man they were fighting went by the name Muscular. A well-known villain, his quirk allowed him to manipulate the muscle fibers in his body, increasing his strength, speed, and endurance to insane levels. Muscular was a high-profile villain, having killed several well-known heroes and countless civilians. This alongside his bloodlust was why he was known as the Carnal Murderer. Analyzing the combatants, it was clear to Izuku that the Water Horse duo were going to be his next victims. Muscular showed no signs of injury while both Anahita, the hero name of the wife, and Locke, the hero name of the husband, were both filled with cuts and bruises. Izuku groaned as he knew what he had to do. Strength-based quirks were one of his least favorite to go against, but that didn't deter him from doing what he believed was right. "This is going to suck. Is that all you got?" Muscular triumphantly roared as he destroyed the wave of water Anahita sent at him with a simple punch. "Shit," the heroine mentally cursed. Behind her, her husband was recovering from a heavy hit he took earlier. If he hadn't been fast enough, Muscular would have landed a killing blow. "No matter what we throw at him, he keeps shrugging it off. We might actually die here." Quickly glancing around, she noticed that no one was around. Initially, there was a family around who were unlucky enough to run into the villain. But it looked like they used the water horse duo's interference to run away. At least we stopped him from killing his original targets. Wasting no time, Muscular ran towards the woman, aiming to end the battle once and for all. From the corner of her eye, Anahita saw that her husband was getting back up, though if she didn't slow down the villain, it would be too late. Creating a wall of water. She knew that what she was doing could result in her death, as there was no way this wall was going to hold. All that she could do was hope that it would slow him down enough so that Locke could get back into the battle. As long as one of them was alive, then there was still a chance that Muscular could be defeated. Bracing for impact, she was surprised to see a small explosive hit the villain in his left shoulder. The unexpected impact throwing him back. It was then that a figure dressed in all white landed in between the woman and the carnal murderer. "Hey, what gives?" Muscular shouted, not liking when a battle was interrupted. His eyes then widened in realization before a feral grin formed on his face. "Ha ha ha ha, it's Moon Knight. Ever since you've made it on the news, I've always wanted to kill you. Now it seems like I have my chance." Hearing this didn't surprise Izuku. It was a well-known fact that Muscular was an avid fan of challenging powerful opponents. Fighting and killing were hobbies of the A-ranked villain, and it was something Izuku despised. Anyone who dared harm or kill the innocent received no mercy from the vigilante. You'll find that to be a very hard thing to do. Quote, "Love the confidence, but can you back it up?" Without warning, Muscular shot forwards, eager to punch the vigilante. Izuku threw 3 explosive crescent darts in response, only for the man to plow right through them as if they were nothing. Fuck, Izuku thought to himself as he narrowly avoided an attack from his opponent. This was why he hated fighting those with significant strength-based quirks. Blunt force attacks hardly worked against them. Clutching his fist, Izuku activated the shockwave property of his gloves and threw a punch at the villain's stomach in retaliation, sending him flying into a building. Immediately after, Izuku clenched his left hand in pain. "It's like punching a brick wall." "Pa, you call that a hit?" Glancing back, Izuku was surprised to see that Muscular was unharmed. That was troubling. Not only was he struck with the shockwave property of his glove, but Izuku's strength was also being boosted by the full moon outside. If he could shrug off such hits, this battle wasn't looking good for the vigilante. Note to self, get new weapons which can deal with guys like him. Smiling, Muscular ran towards the vigilante, only for a wave of water to strike him from the side, halting his process. Taking a quick peek behind him, Izuku saw that it had come from Anahita, the woman preparing another attack. It was then that the water witch had struck the villain began spinning around, trapping him in a whirlpool. Based on the shocked expression of the woman, Izuku knew she wasn't the one doing this. Both of them took a look to the right and saw that it was Locke who was keeping the villain at bay. "You have a plan?" Anahita asked Izuku. Without saying anything, the 3 of them came to the agreement that they needed to work together to beat Muscular. Even if Izuku was a vigilante and they were heroes, their occupations didn't matter if they were dead after all. "Out of the 3 of us, I'm best suited to engage him in close quarters," Izuku replied. "I'll keep him from reaching you guys. Just focus on attacking from a distance." Quote. Anahita nodded as the whirlpool exploded, Muscular having managed to gather enough strength to destroy it with one punch. "You're starting to annoy me," Muscular snarled. "Same goes to you," Locke quipped despite still being injured. Of the water horse duo, Anahita was the more serious one while Locke was a bit chatty. It was a dynamic they were famous for. Smashing his fists together, Muscular shot forwards, prompting the 2 heroes to use their quirks to slow him down. Whipping out his retractable staff, Izuku ran towards the villain and swung at his cheek. Having a shockwave generator in his staff activated, the blow sent his target stumbling back. Wasting no time, Izuku slammed Hi's staff in the man's other cheek before spinning it around. With the water duo throwing another wave at the villain, Izuku thrusted the tip of the staff into the man's chest, having activated the Seker et taser that was installed in the weapon. Gah! Crying out in pain, Muscular fought through the electricity flowing through his body and grabbed the staff with one hand. Using his free hand, he struck Izuku in the stomach, sending him flying into a nearby car, leaving a huge dent in it with Izuku in the middle. The strength of the blow was enough to daze Izuku, the only reason he wasn't dead being the durability of carbodium. If his suit was made of anything else, there would be a giant hole in his stomach. Thankfully, all he had were 3 broken ribs. Spitting up blood inside his mask, Izuku stood back up and prepared to get back into the battle. Unfortunately, it seemed that Muscular had knocked the water horse duo while he was dazed and was preparing to stomp on Anahida's head. Not giving a damn about his physical state, Izuku tossed an electrified crescent dart at his opponent, injuring him. Turning his attention towards the vigilante, crushing the dart to remove its effect, Muscular smirked as he took a step forward, forgetting about his initial plans to cave in Anahida's head. Predictable, Izuku thought to himself. Muscular has a one-track mind. Now, to keep him OCCU. Hide until the water horse duo wakes up. I thought I killed you with that hit, Muscular bragged as he cracked his knuckles. And I thought I told you it was hard to kill me, Izuku responded before sending out his bait. Especially with a weak-ass hit like that. Like an idiot, Muscular fell into his trap. Looks like I'll have to go all out then. As soon as he said this, the muscle fibers around him began to grow significantly larger. Once they did, the man let out a mighty roar before changing at Izuku. Thankfully, Izuku was prepared, sidestepping to avoid the fist aimed at his face. Muscular is all strength and no skill, Izuku thought to himself as he ducked to dodge another fist before striking the villain with a punch of his own. While it did almost no damage, it gave Izuku some breathing room. All I gotta do is keep dodging. His quirk makes him fast, but only physically. It isn't a true speed quirk which heightens his reaction time as well. He's stronger, but I'm faster, smarter, and more skilled. The two continued their little dance, with Muscular attempting to hit Izuku while the boy kept dodging and retaliating with his own. Unfortunately, they were at a stalemate. Muscular kept swinging wildly, making it easy for Izuku to avoid taking damage while Izuku simply couldn't knock him out fast enough. Aiming for Muscular's liver, Izuku repeatedly struck the same area, hoping that by focusing on one area, he could pierce through Muscular's defenses. A good shot to the liver was also enough to beat an opponent when their face is being protected, Muscular having enough common sense to do so. Sadly, Izuku's luck would only get worse, for he would end up moving in a way which triggered his previous injuries, causing him to wobble a bit. This gave Muscular the opening he needed to grab Izuku's neck. Fun's over for you, kid, Muscular taunted as Izuku tried prying his hand open with his own, only for it to not work. Now it's time for you to show me your blood. Upon saying this, Muscular began strangling the boy, eager to pop his head. With his carbodium armor denting and his oxygen levels running out, Izuku began struggling harder. Of course, it did nothing. As Muscular continued to hold his neck, Izuku started seeing red. His mind began to get a bit hazy as the remainder of his sanity began to wash away. All he had in mind now was survival. It was during this mental breakdown that Izuku got an idea. Defiantly looking at the villain in the face, Izuku muttered something to him. "Me, your blood." Quote, "What was that?" Muscular asked mockingly. "I couldn't hear you over the sound of you choking," I said. Without warning, Izuku whipped out a crescent dart and with the last bit of his strength, jabbed it in the man's right eye, causing him to scream in agony and let go of his target. "Show me your blood." Quote, with extreme speed, Izuku yanked the dart out of the man's eye socket, taking the eye with him. Stepping back, Izuku removed the body part from the dart and crushed it in his hand, all while Muscular was watching him with his remaining one. "You fucker," Muscular roared in anger. "You're not the only one willing to maim someone in a fight," Izuku told him, ignoring the shocked stares of the now awake water horse duo. Based on the fact they were preparing an attack, It seems they had woken up while Izuku was being choked. Continuing to not face them, Izuku began to speak. Throw water at him. It's time we end this. Quote. Sensing he had a plan, the two heroes complied, throwing a massive wave at the man. As the wave made contact with his skin, Izuku threw 3 electrified crescent darts, the water increasing the amount of damage Muscular received. Once the current of electricity wore off, the villain fell to the ground, unconscious. With this, Izuku and the water horse duo let loose sighs of relief. This was no doubt the strongest opponent any of them ever faced. After checking up on his wife, Locke turned his attention towards the vigilante. Hey, thanks for the help. If it wasn't for you, he might have killed us. Izuku simply nodded before walking away. Anahita, noticing that he was clutching his stomach and limping, called out to him. Hey, you need help. We know a good hospital which could treat your wounds. Can't, Izuku replied, still walking away. I'll be fine. Just get this bastard in jail and get yourselves healed. Quote. We will. Both simultaneously said before Locke continued. If you ever need any help, don't hesitate to look for us. Izuku responded with another nod. Seeing as they decided to make their identities public, it wouldn't be hard for him to track them if he ever needed backup. Remembering that he needed to go, Izuku began running, looking for a nearby alleyway. Once he found one, he activated his invisibility and began calling the church through a communicator installed in his mask. Tusky, it's me. Track my location and prepare the medical staff. I had a run-in with the villain Muscular. Quote. With help from the medical staff at the Church of Khonshu, Izuku was back to normal in less than an hour. The church's medical staff consisted of 2 women, Chiyo Chitose and Akatsuki Iku. Chiyo's quirk, named Restoration, allowed her to heal anyone she touches. It was a medium-leveled quirk though, meaning that her quirk wasn't as powerful as that of the most famous healers. However, Akatsuki's quirk, known as Helping Hand, strengthened the quirk of anyone she touches for a minute. With this boost, Chiyo's quirk skyrockets into immense levels, which added with Izuku's minor healing factor, is what allows her to heal Izuku in less than an hour. Even with the boost, she still cannot regenerate limbs or important organs, which meant that if he lost one, he was screwed. After being healed, Izuku wasted no time in putting in a request for some new weapons. His fight with Muscular ended up being a wake-up call that his current gear wasn't enough. He needed more versatility. But what could I add? Izuku thought to himself as he paced around the church, trying to think of more gear to add. Oh, I have something. Taking a peek to his left, Izuku noticed that a younger version of himself was now standing next to him, having seemingly appeared out of nowhere. Despite this, Izuku remained calm. Remember how Izuku has been hearing voices? Well, this was one of them. Simply dubbed Deku. This specific hallucination acted just as Izuku did before his death. Why did he exist? Izuku didn't know. He assumed it was his self-conscious trying to maintain the childhood he lost due to Bakugo's words. Of course, he could never get that back, but maybe his mind saw a representation as the best alternative. He couldn't lie, he kind of liked having the kid around. It reminded him of simpler times. Now, if only he would stop using his body to watch footage of All Might. Alright, shoot. Despite Deku's young age, he was quite skilled at analyzing heroes like he was. Most likely due to him being a younger version of himself. Well, we can use something to restrain people with, Deku stated. For when we run into faster people. Maybe we can use own sort of bola launcher or a sticky substance launcher. Single quote. Izuku put a hand on his chin, going over what Deku had said. While the bola was a nice idea in theory, he could only carry so much ammo. His moon-shaped darts were at least small enough to fit in an utility belt. He could probably only carry 5 bolas at once. However, the sticky substance launcher seems like something that could work. He could store far more substance in a tiny bottle compared to carrying bolas on his body. In addition, such substances would probably be easier to replace and could be designed to be a lot tougher. Now that he thought about it, he could probably use the substance to swing around in a similar way that the pro-hero Kamui Woods does with his roots. It was decided, he was going to add this to his arsenal. You can call them web shooters, Deku suggested. You use them to restrain and travel, kinda like a spider does. Izuku simply gave Deku a small nod. That's one idea, but I still need more. Both Izuku and Deku stood in place, trying to come up with more ideas. Eventually, Izuku was able to come up with one. The web shooters actually brought up an interesting scenario. What if he was restrained? Quirks that function similar to his web shooters and Kamui Wood's quirk were quite common, and he wasn't always going to have a dart out to slash things. It was then that his second idea popped into mind. What if he installed retractable claws to his gloves? It would offer a quick way of getting something to cut things with and could help him fight against opponents with shock-absorbing quirks. Their quirks not always protecting them from being stabbed. Even if it did, he could always go for the eyes. Please don't, Deku pleaded. Being a more traditional hero fan, Deku wasn't a big fan of how Izuku handled crime. Something Izuku himself felt was a necessary means of doing so. This would often lead to arguments between the two, arguments that would leave Izuku with a headache. Or would cause him to repeatedly slam his head on something until he was knocked out. At least Deku was the most bearable of the voices' alternate personalities in his head. The two fell into a deep silence for a few seconds. Still brainstorming, that is, until Deku spoke up. Wait, speaking of retractable items, what about a shield? Single quote. Again, Izuku thought over Deku's suggestion. A shield could provide more defense, allowing him to block attacks aimed at him or a bystander. With it being retractable, it meant he could take it on the go. That works. It's also something to throw around. A shield thrown by a peak human's going to hurt like hell, even more so when he's powered by the moon. You're going to have to learn to ricochet it though, Deku noted. Single quote. Someone could dodge and grab it from the ground. Izuku shrugged nonchalantly. Knuckleduster probably knows how to do it. Maybe Toga. Both Knuckleduster and Himiko were surprisingly lethal sharpshooters despite their close-quarters combat style. Eventually deciding that he had enough ideas for now, Izuku filled in a request for the church's scientists to work on these new weapons. After receiving notice that the weapons would be ready in a few days, Izuku bid the church goodbye and went back home. He needed a good rest. It's been 2 days since his fight with Muscular. The villain ended up going to prison, something which pleased the boy. In terms of his capture, the Water Horse duo ended up giving him some of the credit, declaring that if he hadn't interfered, then they would have died. In addition, footage from Sev. Errol's security cameras set up in the area had recorded him removing the man's eye. With it being made available for public viewing by several news outlets, Izuku knew that this would discourage several to be villains from acting up. After all, if he was able to do that much damage to one of the most deadly villains to ever exist, then there was no way they could beat him. To Izuku, that was the message behind the video. No matter how powerful someone was, he will find a way to beat them. Having slipped away from his bullies, Izuku was making his way home when he received a phone call. Checking it, he noticed that it was Tusky who was calling him. Hello Tusky, are the projects ready? Izuku questioned the man, projects being a code word for weapons. Not yet, the high priest replied, causing Izuku to become confused. Tusky never called unless it was important, so if he wasn't calling because of the weapons, why was he calling? You did receive something from an acquaintance of mine. Tusky had quite a few acquaintances, and most of them were from the cult. Whatever they gave him had to be useful. What is it? It's best if you see for yourself. He even came here to hand-deliver it. Initially questioning why this was, Izuku decided not to bring this up to Tusky. It really didn't matter. Sure, I'll check it out in 30 minutes. Let me inform my mom first and Iu. Are you alright Izuku? Tusky asked, confused as to why his boss suddenly stopped talking. Yeah, I just stepped in something disgusting, Izuku mumbled, glancing at his now dirty shoe. Looking down, he saw that he had stepped on a puddle of sludge. It didn't take a genius to realize where this piece of sludge came from in a world where the majority of the world had superpowers. Feeling something attempting to sneak up on him, Izuku leapt backwards, managing to avoid a tendril that had been shot at him. Tusky, I'm going to have to call you back. I got a minor inconvenience to deal with. Understood. Be careful. Damn kid, you're quite fast, a voice said. It was then that a pile of sludge fell from the roof of the tunnel he was in, its eyes staring into his. "And here I thought you were a harmless schoolboy." Quote, "What the hell do you want?" Izuku asked. Unknown to the sludge villain, Izuku began to reach into his bag and grab a pencil. "Well, I'm trying to flee from a pesky hero and I was hoping to use a disguise to help me get rid of him. You just so happened to volunteer yourself by coincidentally being where I am. Now, if you could stay still, I promise you this won't take long." Summoning several tendrils, the sludge villain attempted to grab Izuku, only for the boy to remove his bag from his back. With a mighty swing, he knocked back the tendrils and dislodged them from the body. Dropping the bag, Izuku resumed a boxing stance, carefully watching as the villain reabsorbed the lost tendrils into his body. "Looks like he's immune to physical attacks," Izuku mentally thought to himself. Noticing how the villain didn't even flinch when Izuku struck him with his bag. Such was to be expected from someone literally made of liquid material. His eyes then landed on the villain's own pair. Does that extend to his eyes? Time to test it out. Impressive, but there's no way you're winning this fight. Summoning more tendrils, the villain continued his attack. Ducking under the initial onslaught, Izuku rushed forwards, much to his attacker's surprise. Raising more tendrils, the villain was hoping to stop the boy, but he severely underestimated his opponent's speed. By the time he rose them, Izuku was already in his face. Wasting no time, Izuku proceeded to jab his pencil into his left eye. For the second time this week, Izuku ended up taking someone's eye out. Reeling back, the villain began to protectively cover his eye in sludge, the pencil still sticking through the organ. Meanwhile, Izuku simply wiped some of the blood that got onto his cheek before quickly snagging another pencil. Eventually getting his bearings together, the sludge villain glared at the boy with his remaining eye. "My eye. Who the hell do you think you are?" That was a pretty loud scream. Izuku said, completely ignoring the question. "I wonder if any hero heard it. Well, it doesn't matter. You have one eye and I have plenty of things to stab you with." Despite him being made of sludge, Izuku's little speech sent chills down the villain's body. Looking at the boy's neutral expression, the same one he wore throughout this encounter, he knew that Izuku seriously meant what he said. This caused the villain to be filled with such fear that even the pro-hero chasing him couldn't provide. What he was looking at was a psychopath he ended up pissing off. The worst part about all this was that he didn't even use a quirk to hurt him. All of that was pure skill, anyone could see this was the case. Now, he had a psychotic boy threatening to harm him. Said boy having found out one of his only weaknesses in only a few minutes. "You asked who I was," Izuku said, causing the villain's body to jolt upwards. Spinning his pencil around in his hand, he pointed at the sludge villain's eye, making him gulp. "I'm a guy who hates villains, simple as that." Preparing to lunge forwards, Izuku was about to rush towards his opponent, only to saint up once he heard a catchphrase which had made up the parts of his childhood before his death. "Never fear, for I am here." Turning around, the villain and secret vigilante were met with the sight of All Might in all his glory. Normally, the hero's presence was enough to freak out any villain, but after fighting someone who had no qualms with stabbing his eye multiple times, the sludge villain couldn't help but sigh in relief. Something Izuku picked up on. "Well, guess you got lucky," Izuku told the villain as All Might walked towards them. "Young man, are you alright?" All Might asked Izuku. "Is All Might really talking to us?" Deku asked, materializing right next to him. Izuku had to resist the urge to roll his eyes. Of course he would show up now. "Yes, now hush." Turning to the hero, Izuku nodded. "I am. Thank you All Might." "Not a problem my boy. Now, let me deal with this villain real quick before he could do any more harm." "I surrender," the villain shouted, surprising All Might. "Just take me from this crazy kid. I beg of you." Confused, All Might turned his attention towards the boy who simply shrugged. "He attacked me and I stabbed his eye in return." "Okay," wisely deciding not to push for more info. All Might began dialing up the police. After doing so, he turned his attention back to Izuku. "Thank you for helping me capture him, I guess." "You're welcome. Ask him for his autograph." Deku begged him. Knowing full well that the boy would bother him if he didn't, Izuku complied. Walking towards his bag, He pulled out his latest volume of his hero analysis books and handed it to the man. Would you mind if I asked for your autograph? Not at all. With a boisterous laugh, All Might quickly signed the book. Thanking him, Izuku put it away and picked up his bag. Walking past the villain, he shot him a glare, scaring him. What an interesting kid, All Might thought to himself as he watched the boy go. Having informed his mom that he would be hanging out with friends, Izuku made his way to the cafe. Waiting for him was Tusky, having taken a seat at one of the tables. Ah, Izuku. Our guest is waiting for you in the church, Tusky stated. Wasting no time, the man led him to the secret room. Where are Dabi and Himiko? Izuku asked, noticing that none of his friends were around. I had them run some errands for me, the man replied. It's be saint that you speak to our guest with no interruptions. Eventually, they made their way to the church where a strange animal in a suit was waiting for them. Nezu, I brought Izuku as you asked. Thank you. The animal replied before gesturing towards an empty seat. Sit Izuku, we have much to talk about. Doing as what he was told, Izuku was curious as to what Nezu wanted with him. He knew quite a bit about the animal. How his quirk, high specs, made him one of the smartest beings to ever exist and that he was the principal of UA Academy. Now, I know what you must be thinking. Am I a bear, a mouse, or a dog? In the end, none of that matters since I'm Nezu, the principal of UA Academy, the animal introduced himself. First off, allow me to inform you that I know that you're the Moon Knight. Normally, Izuku would freak out. However, due to the fact that Nezu was currently inside the church, it meant that Tusky trusted him. In that case, Izuku had little to fear, though it made him curious as to what the principal wanted. So, you going to tell anyone? Not at all, Nezu replied. You see, I'm quite a fan of your work. This is where my offer comes into play. You may or may not know, but I am the principal of a small school known as UA Academy and I want to offer you a chance to take the school's exam for recommended students. Izuku blinked. The principal of UA was offering him a possibly insane overly violent vigilante, a recommendation to the best hero school in Japan. I assume Tusky mentioned a lot about me. He did. Nonetheless, I still chose to give you a recommendation. Well, that concluded that the principal was actually serious about this. You attending UA actually benefits the both of us, the animal stated. I get someone who will push this ours class to be the best heroes they can be. Someone like you, a person who doesn't let society stop him from doing what's right is what I want in my school. Meanwhile, Moon Knight gets to be a registered hero. All I have to do is say that you're interning under me and you won't have to worry about ever getting in trouble with the law. So, do we have an agreement? Placing his hand on his chin, Izuku began to think to himself. Now, the benefit of Moon Knight being registered as a hero was extremely tempting. However, does he really want to attend hero courses? To him, it was simply a waste of time. Why bother if he could simply kick ass without doing so, even if it will be harder due to the law constantly monitoring his every move? He also really wanted to enter a business course. If he was to continue being Moon Knight, he would need money to buy parts for his gear. The church, while having tons of money, might not have enough when it really counts. He also wanted to take the guise as a businessman so he could root himself further into society. He knew how to invent, having helped create his current gear and fight. Now all he needed was social and/or political power so he could root out corrupt businessmen. You can't give this up. Deku shouted, having taken a seat next to Izuku. This has been our dream for years. Quote, correction, it's been your dream. I gave up aiming for you. After Bakugo told me to kill myself, Izuku told him before contacting Khonshu. Do you want me to go? There are 2 allies there that I wish for you to meet, Khonshu stated. But you do not need to attend to meet either of them. It is your choice. Staring back at the principal, Izuku gave his answer. I appreciate the offer and all, but I'm going to have to decline. Heroics isn't my thing. If that is what you wish, then I understand. However, I do have another offer I want to give you. Most do not know this, but recommendations can be given for other departments. Tusky me. NTIONED to me you were looking for schools with a good business program. UA has quite the strong one so if you want, I can give you a recommendation to our business program. The intern aspect from my last offer will still apply. What do you say? Izuku glanced at the animal, trying to see if he had a hidden agenda. The offer was simply too good to pass up on. Detecting no deceit, the boy nodded his head. I can do that. Good. Reaching forwards, Nezu handed Izuku a card with details about the exam. The test is in 2 weeks. Normally, I'd advise hopeful students to study, but I know you're going to pass. I'll be seeing you. With that, the principal began making his way to the exit. However, he suddenly stopped and turned around. Oh, and Midoriya. Praised Khonshu. With that, he finally left the boy to himself. Thanks for watching.